really what we do is we go into retailers, typically in grocery, but they can run the gamut of sort of industries, but definitely on the retail side. And we evaluate what are the capabilities of a team today and what do we know is best in class. At Conlego, my role is I lead engagements with the client. So that's client facing with the executive team on setting up the engagement, sort of getting the groundwork together so the rest of the team can go in and do what they need to do from a negotiation standpoint. The first time I joined Conlego, I don't know if I had ever opened Excel before on my computer. And retail runs on Excel. To my absolute horror, everything is done in Excel. So I had a crash course in Excel. I think I burned through thousands of hours of YouTube videos just to get up to speed. I'm like, what are we doing here? And it always bugged me because our clients ran on Excel, our systems run on Excel, and it was a very inefficient way to do things. And the entire world knows that software platforms exist, but it really felt like retail was dragging its feet and getting to the party. And they were just very resistant to any sort of change. A lot of retailers are, they've been around for 60, 70, 80 years. And they have legacy systems built on top of legacy systems, built on top of legacy systems. And so sometimes Excel is actually the only way we can pull something out of one database, drop it into another one, pull something out of a different database, combine it, run a little bit of analysis. And we had found that with our tool, we were most successful when we took those different pieces, dropped it into Excel, did the work on the back end for the client, and spit a result out. And so I started thinking a couple of years ago, if we're not going to get retailers to change their systems, what if we just build a product on our end that can take all the information from their legacy databases, we drop it into our back end and create a front end that's really nice and pretty for everyone to look at. It gives them the answer they're actually searching for. And that's where we're at today. Yeah, we were looking for a commitment on team size. That for us was something that was really hard to pin people down. And I know it's an exact science, but we never felt comfortable with anyone outside of Masterborn in giving us sort of like, once you have a team, like you'll know that team and you'll stick with that team. We were really worried about being traded off from one team to the next as different expertise is built out. I think there are attractive parts of that, right? I want the expert in the room if we're doing something crazy, but what we're doing is not crazy. The team might say at times that it's crazy talking to us because I think there's some complications in how we run calculations. I know you've sat in those conversations. We're all banging our head against the wall, but from a software perspective, we're not doing anything wild and crazy. And so we really wanted to work with a team that would understand, okay, this is our business, and there are a lot of nuances to it. And in retail in particular, it's another language to start to know. And Masterborn was really the only company that got us to a point where we were very comfortable with, okay, this is going to be the team that's actually working on this. And, some of the players on the team might change around. That certainly happens. But for when we're leading it for the core engagement, we were confident that we were going to have the same people. And that through line was very important to us. The willingness to show up was the biggest one for us. And I know, right now we talk about in the tool, we're doing things that don't scale. So on purpose, right? We're with our clients, we're going to be doing something that doesn't scale because we want to make sure that it's a really good experience. So I don't know how much time Gray has, but that probably doesn't exponentially scale. But Gray showing up asking questions, getting to know our business, bringing Brandon, who had a retail background, at least with the craziness on all the numbers in prior ventures, really spoke to us about, okay, this would be a company that's going to care. And that was very different than a lot of the other experiences that we had with a lot of clients. So that was probably number one that stood out. The you know we did 2 phases with Masterboard, right? We did the prototype, which I think the real attribute was sort of the involvement with the team, and it felt like we were going to be looked at and understood. And with a smaller team, especially, felt like we would be important and we would get our calls answered, right? That's where we went with the phase 0 to get to the prototype. After the prototype, it was just clear the amount of time and attention that went into building the prototype and understanding what we do. We always joke that if we needed a negotiator in a pinch, we would just call Adam, because he now could run a Conlego negotiation like Benton and I could. And that, for us, was a no-brainer in moving into the next stage. The concerns. We had never worked with a Polish company before, but honestly, it wasn't really a concern. A lot of our domestic, you've probably heard this before, but they were all pushing us like, oh, you don't understand, the time zone is going to be an absolute productivity killer. You're not going to get anything done. You're not going to get any responses. It's going to be really hard for you to develop this product. I can't. It's just been such a non-factor. It's hilarious. And we have some people that work for us that are in San Francisco. So we're on the West Coast, and we have some that live on the East Coast. And we have an East Coaster that right now is working on a West Coast client. So we get it. Like, that time, it just happens. And I just don't think it's an issue. And it really felt like a legacy claim that these domestic software producers were saying to try to scare us away, that they just harped. Every single one without fail harped on don't do that, the time commitment. And it's just been a zero factor. So I would say maybe that was in the back of our minds, but it has not been an issue. For us, it's the willingness to understand our business, because our conversations, if we schedule an hour for a Thursday, I know that I don't have to spend 45 minutes explaining to the team what I mean by X, Y, or Z. We can just say, hey, this is the issue that we're having. And everyone knows, okay, this is why that would be an issue. Let's talk about some solves. Now, certainly there are times where we have to explain things to ourselves. So it's not like it's not automatic. But the willingness of the team to dig in and really work to understand what we're about has by far and away been the number one. With no prior history working in this space, I would have thought that was sort of 101. Like, you need to know what's going on in the business, because even when we are sitting down and we're having really in-depth technical meetings, there are still 100 decision points that need to be made by the developers that I don't even know about and that I do not want to know about. When they know the business at a much higher level, I am a lot more confident that those decisions are being made through that lens. And we did not find that anywhere else. It was, we already have this box built. How can we cram you into it? And it was a very different experience with Masterboard.